I'm Mark Bouris, and this is Straight Talk. Danny Abdallah, welcome to Straight Talk, mate.
Thanks, Mark.
Sort of feel like apologetic to some extent that I'm only just getting to speak to you about something that happened just on 2 and a bit years ago. It's probably the wrong word to use, but I'm fascinated with how resilient people can be and how people deal with crisis and then to some extent can turn crisis around into opportunity. You had 6 kids?
Yep.
I'd just like you just to take me through how your family rolled. You know, what was the life like with your 6 kids? And of course, Bridget Sakr
Yep.
and her child as well. It was like part of a bigger family, your group.
Extended family.
Yeah, standard family, correct. As they say, standard Wog family. I'm from one of those Wog families and we all hang out together. Cousins, uncles, aunties.
100%.
We're all together, eat together, hang out together, cause trouble together, the whole thing, a whole lot of us, and laugh and dance and sing and drink. But take me back. What was it like?
So I've got a personal as a dad. I've got an established business in construction and people used to tell me, what's your job? I jokingly used to say I'm a full-time father, part-time worker. My wife and I got married 2004. We had 6 children under the age of 9.
Wow.
One after the other. So it got to a point where I just got immune to that noise and the traffic and couldn't wait to get home. And I was a real active dad. Actually, I'd done a trip with my daughter and my son. Those Thai camps, we took just us 3, and
They went on Thai camps with you?
Yeah, I
cool.
took them and I was, traveled Disney World and we were just always, I was an active dad. And we had just come back from Queensland at the time. And I was at Terrigal, actually. And my son was in year 8. And, I grew up in Western Sydney, sort of a bit of a rough place at the time. And I was worried about my son. And I remember saying to my son, I was walking through Terrigal Beach and I said, son, the choices you make daily determine the man you become. And I was explaining about him and his uncle. I got a family friend that ended up in jail for 10 years. And I said it was the daily choices he made when he was younger. And same with me. I got 6 kids, established company. And he understood that. And I remember 4 days later, the kids went for a walk to get some ice cream. And there was 7 children. There was Anthony. These are my kids, Anthony, Angelina, Liana, and Sienna. My niece and nephew, Mabel and Charbel, and Bridget's daughter, Veronique. I told them to go for a walk and get some ice cream. It's funny because they were walking just on the footpath and next minute I get a phone call that no parent should ever get.
Who rang you?
Mabel, which is my niece, rang her mum. She ran to the car, quick, let's go. I jumped in the car with my sister-in-law, Anya, and we drove down. I'm driving there thinking, Anthony or Charbel, the boys must have crossed the road. Something must have happened. But I came and I just saw a car just hit 7 children at 130 Ks on impact. And there was my daughter, Liana, and Mabel. They were the only ones that were conscious. There was 5 kids on the floor and 4 had died instantly. And it was horrendous. I remember I was coming up to the scene and one of the guys saw me. There was only 2 people that had just rocked up. I was the 3rd.
Passers-by.
Yeah, passers-by. They just came, they seen all this. And to see something like that, where do you go? Who do you go to? And one of them raced over to me and said, man, he was from the neighborhood. He goes, Danny, bro, thank God you're here. He goes, mate, we need to find out who these parents are. I said, mate, these are my kids. And he was taken back at the time.
When you were driving there towards what you knew was an accident as a result of the phone call, what was your physical state?
I was going there to see, assess and fix. I'm a dad.
Yeah.
We fix problems.
Yeah.
And I was racing over there just to say, okay, what's going on? Something's happened. What do I got to do next?
Yeah.
So when I got there, it was actually totally different.
Did you feel faint, or was there any physiological? The reason I ask you the question is because I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes and I can't.
Look, I didn't think I was going to respond this way, to be quite honest. I got there, I was in obviously a state of shock. You see your kids dead.
Huh.
You see Bridget's daughter dead, gone. What did I do? I walked past them and I just kept on saying to myself, their vessels, their souls aren't there. Their vessels, their souls aren't there. They're not there. Their souls have gone. So I didn't have to, Then my wife comes, the car behind me, and she responded. She just got on her knees, started praying, Our Father, Hail Mary, Our Father, Hail Mary, at the time. And I just kept on walking, looking, thinking, okay. It's one thing when I realised a child gets hit by a car, you get on your knees, you can focus. But when you've got 4 children dead in front of you, it's just difficult. You go to this, it's hard because you go to this child, you think, okay, wait a minute, I backed away, go to that, and you don't know where to go. And then I got to a point where I just surrendered. I said, God, this is bigger than me. I surrender this to you. And
where did you get that from? I mean, because
it was like an out-of-body experience. It was like myself, I just came out of my body. I looked at this whole thing on a top view and I just realised, wait a minute, this is so much bigger than me. And I just surrendered. And then I started going into that, okay, what have I got control of? Liana, Mabel, Leila, my wife. The ambulance kept coming, police came, they made it a crime scene. Leila, get in the ambulance. Liana, come on, take Liana to the hospital. She had a cut on her face. Get Mabel, go to the hospital. And at the time, and I remember Leila said to me, please make sure they come to the hospital. I said, don't worry, I promise. But she went in the ambulance and left. I had to get out of there. And
do you get angry? Was there any anger?
There was anger, yes. But at that stage, there was a bit of anger. But the thing is, when you have a lot of kids, you're the guy that has to keep everyone calm and make sure everything's okay. And I couldn't take the dad hat off that I've always had on. And that's, and if you knew me before I had kids, if someone had a problem, I'd fix it. And that's as you grow and you realize I had to keep my dad hat on. And as soon as I got the kids in there, they put the tape, the police crime scene. And then I realised they were gone when the police, I could see from a distance, they were just covering each body with the blanket. I went to the hospital.
The ambulance took the other 4 children to the hospital?
Yeah. The other 3 children, yeah.
You've had a background in martial arts, and sometimes we wonder why we do martial arts. We always say it's because we like the exercise and it's good for us. But secretly, we also think one day we might have to use it. You never know. Hopefully not. How do you keep that dad hat on and act responsibly and act as a leader in the family and keep everybody calm and at peace when you've got the conflict inside you, knowing you could probably do some damage to the person, who's caused all this?
I was in a place of shock at the time.
Yeah.
You don't realise, I think was the last thing, when shock subsides, you're more thinking, okay, what the fuck's going on here?
Yeah, totally.
What's going on? And you're trying to see, observe, and okay, this has happened now. What do I do next? And even I remember one of the guys goes, the driver's up there. We're not going to race over to the driver and I've got my kids in front of me.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't. You think, okay, if someone told me that was going to happen to me, mate, I would have said, listen, if that happened to me, I would have done this and this and this. Yeah. But when you've got your kids in one hand and the driver up there, you don't want to leave your kids and you just, it was a place of shock at the time. And then all I could think of was my other kids. It was like, I've lost half my family. I don't want to lose the rest.
Where does this come from? You said earlier that you would describe yourself as a part-time worker, part-time construction.
Full-time father, part-time worker.
Full-time full-time father, right? Is that a sense of duty that Danny Abdallah has, or is it beyond a sense of duty and it's something you actually love it? I mean, it's the thrill of your life.
Man, look, yeah, it is a thrill. I love kids. I've always have. I've grown up. I was a juvenile as a kid, always in trouble. I started, martial arts back then, and you learn pretty quick that you got to hustle, and nobody really loves you, and the only ones that love you is your kids, and it sort of taught me it's just the only greatest investment is your family, and that's how I probably got there.
Where did you go to school? Where'd you grow up?
I went to Blacktown.
Yeah.
I went to a school in Marion called Holy Family.
Yeah. Was it a De La Salle school? Or
no, it was a
Morris?
Catholic school. And then I got kicked out of a couple of schools as well when I was a kid.
Was that because of the Lebanese thing? Because I went to St. John's, Lakemba. De La Salle's going to Lakemba. And there was always a conflict between the Lebanese and the non-Lebanese. And to some extent, I'll be honest, I probably can say that these days, 50 years later, that a lot of the teachers who were, Aussie guys didn't like the Lebanese boys, and it was bigotry.
Oh yeah,
I'll put it straight to you. It was bigotry in those days. I was in the middle because, I'm not white, not Aussie, but I'm not full Greek either. So my dad was Greek, my mother's Irish. So, and there was conflict there. I wasn't, but a lot of the people were sort of intimidated by Lebanese or scared. Was that something that you had growing up?
Yeah, I did. There was a bit of racism, but I just got on with it. It was one of those things. And
but were you reacting to that when you got into trouble or not?
No, I didn't react to that. I actually there wasn't a lot of Lebanese in Blacktown at the time.
Oh, wasn't there? Okay.
And basically, I just realised sometimes you got to defend yourself. I remember when I was a kid, I used to, back when I was in primary school, my mum used to make sandwiches, the lead bread sandwiches. I used to hide. I was embarrassed at the time because there was no other ethnics eating ethnic food. But then I realised that they all loved it. So
she made sandwiches, mate. Don't worry about that.
She made extra, and I'd give it to the other kids.
But sometimes come with melanzana, like the eggplant with the garlic, because it had been the night before's dinner, leftovers, and same deal. But I always wanted to eat a meat pie. You know what's crazy? I didn't want to eat that stuff. I wanted to eat. Dad wouldn't let me eat Devon. He said, "You're not having Devon tomato sauce, like a roll that you could buy on Monday, because you couldn't get." When I went to school, you couldn't get. There was no bread on Mondays, so bread didn't get delivered. It could only get delivered on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. By the time Monday came, it was all stale or run out. So we always just ordered our lunch on Monday at school. Anyway, it was $2 bob or something. It was nothing. I'm talking about pounds, shillings, and pence, by the way. And I always wanted to get a pie or a Devon sandwich, just like all the other kids. And Dad used to go off his head. "You're not having a Devon sandwich. That's absolute rubbish," he said. "Then the tomato sauce." And he said, "I'll make you something." But that's all I wanted to have was a meat pie or something, But it's funny. You're right. My mates liked what I was eating because they wanted to taste what I was eating. They thought it was a bit exotic.
And I loved the pie as well. Yeah, they were pretty good.
They were pretty good. Yeah.
I used to love the pies.
Put the sauce on top.
Sauce. My mum didn't even like me having sauce. She hated sauce.
Can I ask you, how do you eat your meat pie? I used to take the lid off and put the sauce in the thing, then eat the lid separately or the top part. Then how I ate the rest of it, I don't know. Somehow scooped it out or something. But I ate the pie bit separately to the top. I don't know. That's probably not the way you're supposed to eat meat pie in those days. But that's how I ate them.
I'd peel the top off, put the sauce, and then put the top back on.
You're a lot more new than me. That's why you're in the construction industry. Yeah? And it's funny, because your personality. It's interesting. Your personality. You said you like to fix things or make things right within your family, especially. And that probably is what you do in your business too. You go around fixing stuff, making things right, making things perfect.
Yep.
And that personality looks like it overrode, or somehow you're able to channel that during all the emotion around
the tragedy,
this particular day. And I find it also interesting that you're able to call on your spirituality and ask God, please take the souls, and you're able to
to connect spiritually. Yeah, we've got a strong. My wife and I have really, we've got a strong faith, and we've always instilled that in our kids. And I think I find my personal opinion, I think it's important to give that, whatever faith you're at, and it's a great value to give, because you know, when things don't work out in life, at least you can look to the heavens and say, man, help us.
Then it gives you hope.
It gives you a bit of hope. It does.
Do you think, as a result of the tragedy, that you have got closer to your faith or got deeper into your faith? And have your kids also become that way? Have they adopted that as well?
Yeah, my other children, we've actually gone in deep. And for us, my wife and I always say every day is a day sooner we're going to be reunited with them.
Right.
We say, you know what, it's not life after death, it's life after life. And we take on that attitude that they're actually preparing us a place. And it helps us. It helps the kids. It gives them hope. Like my youngest boy, sorry, not my youngest, my middle boy, Alex, now he's the oldest.
How old is he now?
He's 8. And one of the lady came up to me, she goes, are you the oldest boy in the family? He goes, no, I've got my brother Anthony, but he's in heaven. He doesn't say he's
cute.
dead.
Yeah.
You know, he's gone. He doesn't say, like, he's in heaven, you know, and that's I think it's important to instill that in families.
Instilling those feelings, are they techniques to deal with trauma, or is it more about your belief?
The techniques, look, I absolutely 100% believe in it, but the actual concept behind it, whether you believe or not, it works. It's been going on for thousands of years, the whole faith story, and it helps a society. I'm not putting it on anyone, and I live my life, I walk my walk, but I absolutely 100% believe in it. But then I look back and I ask, like, what about the guy that doesn't believe? How does it work for him? Well, man, if he doesn't believe or not, those values to instill in children, it works for them. You know, to saying that, you know what, there's something better. Because, you know, in this world that we live in, it's not if, it's when we suffer. We're all gonna go through something in life.
I got 4 sons, and I have a saying which I used to say to my 4 sons when they're little. In fact, one or two of them got it tattooed on their body. But I say work, play, fight, love, but believe. But I say to them, believe in something. They don't necessarily have to believe in what I believe in, but believe in something. It can be religious spirituality. It could be about nature. It helps you deal with times when you don't know what the fuck the answer is. Like, and if it works, it doesn't really matter. There's no point tearing it apart if it works.
100%.
It works, and it works in a family environment, and that's a small society.
Yeah, and that's the way I look at faith. It's I look at it as a spiritual bank account. Every act of kindness, every goodness, every time you pray and stuff, you're depositing in this account. And when your GFC hits, you can at least cash out. But as long as if you don't have that and things happen, you know, you're on empty.
I like the way you put that. It's very clever. It's also quite logical, and it's hard to attach logic to religion and belief, okay? Particularly where religion sort of can do the wrong thing in relation to the belief. So sometimes, you know, the religious orders, the various parts of religion can sort of let us down or disappoint us. But that shouldn't take away from the belief itself. The belief is a different thing. But what you just said was very interesting about when times get tough, whatever they might be. It doesn't have to be a Jeep. So it can be just within your own family, like in your case, or just something that becomes a massive challenge. You like to know that you've got the ability to deal with that. And one way you can feel like you can deal with it is if you are banking gratitude, banking kindness. It's quite a, you know, when they tell us how to meditate and they say meditate with gratitude, you are banking something because it actually helps you
absolutely
go back. If something gets taken away, you can feel more gratitude towards what you did have.
You're actually conditioning yourself. You can cash out.
Yeah. It's very clever. It's a good, very clever technique. It's actually quite brilliant by those like yourself who have the ability to call on it. But as you said earlier, it goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Like people have been playing with this for a long time, but unfortunately, more recently, spiritual belief has become a bit of a
people have done damage to it.
Totally.
Yeah, people have done more harm than good, I think. And like for me, my faith and my mentor is Jesus, and I meditate on the rosary, and that's the way I do what I do.
It's a full meditation. That's perfect.
And I meditate and repetition, and it just helps me and it keeps me calm. And you know, I look at the Jesus story when he was on the cross, and he says, "Forgive them, Father." Right? He got belted, he got smashed, and forgive them, Father, and they know not what they do. And our story of forgiveness, now I understand the science behind it, because you start to realize that forgiveness is actually for the forgiver more than the forgiven.
It's empowering you.
You're actually empowering yourself.
Yeah,
I'm no
yeah.
longer a slave to you anymore.
Mm.
You don't control my emotions. So I'm trying to understand, because of my experience, I understand the science behind forgiveness, not just you have to forgive, like every faith teaches, or our faith,
It wasn't just a matter of, oh, well, like he's a really good guy because he's gone and forgiven this dude. But it was more analytical than that, much more analytical than that. You've actually dug deep into the weeds and worked out you're a net beneficiary
correct.
of being the forgiver. It actually gives you the high ground. It puts you in a different position to everybody else. And, you're in the guard position as
I control
the
my
forgiver.
destiny now.
Correct.
He doesn't control my
So,
destiny.
you've got hold of the gi and you've got control of the whole
Exactly.
thing. And that's quite a good lesson in life. Did you always know that, or did you?
No.
This event,
we activated our forgiveness because of our faith. But then I started to realize there was my kids that are in front of me. And it's sometimes in life you realize trauma happens, but it's not the trauma that affects you. It's what you do next. And that whole forgiveness actually has taught my kids how to forgive. And raising kids is contagious. They do what you do, not what you say.
100%. They copy what they see.
Exactly.
Not what
so
they hear.
if I have revenge, bitterness, and anger in my soul, they're going to catch it. And my daughter, Liana, after 3 months, she said, Dad, you know what? I forgive him,
How
but I
old
don't
was
like
Liana?
him. At 10.
10.
I said, that's fine if you don't like him, but I need her to forgive him for her sake, not for his sake. And now I understand that the whole concept of the spirituality of forgiveness, because I'm actually living it. Don't get me wrong, I cry all the time. We're still grieving, but it would have been a lot worse if my shoulders were heavy with revenge and bitterness and all that. My wife and I, we've got a newborn,
Yep,
6-week-old.
congratulations.
Yeah, and we're moving in the right direction. We're coming out of that valley of grief together.
Can you explain to me what grief is like?
Yeah. Grief, I don't know if I can say it this way. Grief is a prick of a person that comes unannounced. You hate him, but you need him. Because the closest I feel to my kids is when I'm crying. That's the new form of love.
How does it come about? Does it just hit you all of a sudden? Like
You'll hear a song, it'll hit you.
Yeah.
You wake up one morning, it comes. I think I said it to a friend of mine. You and your son, you'll have energy that you pass bang to each other from the day he was born. This energy is called love. And then it goes back and forth and back and forth. And next minute they disappear. That energy actually reverses and hits you straight in the gut. And it becomes grief because it's unexpressed love. That's probably a way I can express that, because they're no longer there anymore. So that energy that I used to give to my son, Anthony, Angelina, and Sienna, and my daughters, Angelina and Sienna, it's no longer there. It's like a reverse. And I have some, like a ball in my stomach that I can't express, and it becomes grief.
And then how do you reconcile grief with forgiveness? Like, how do the two work together?
How do they work together? I think it would have been a lot harder if I didn't forgive. And I had to for the greater good. What's the greater good? Liana, Alex, and Michael, Leila, my wife and kids. I've lost half my household. If I have an unforgiving heart, I'll lose all of it. That was
How? Why would?
because I would have went nuts and chased it and gone for him. And all my life I would have had an obsession about how can I get this guy back. And I wouldn't have been able to thought, how can I move forward? I would have just been chasing and this driver and, the parents and vented on them.
And reliving it all the time.
And exactly.
It's because, obviously when I talk to someone like you, I haven't experienced this, but I guess everybody's the same, but we're all thinking to ourselves, what would we do? How would we react? would we be able to take the high ground like you have? Are we big enough to be able to do what Danny's done? And I quite frankly don't know how I would have reacted, but it's interesting having spoken to you. I probably would react differently after speaking to you today compared to how I think I would have reacted. What you've told me here it makes sense. It's, and I'm not I went to Catholic school. I'm not particularly religious as such, but I do have a spirituality associated with me. I do believe, whether someone's a son of God or whatever, but I do believe there was a dude called Jesus, and he was a great rebel, and he went against the system that was wrong, and he did some great things, and he taught people to be better people. He tried to teach people to be better people.
Correct.
And he was a passive, rebellious person in some respects. And I love that about the story, right? I mean, I just love that. I've gone over this a million times in my mind. Some people say to me, he's the son of God. Other people say there's no such thing as a son of God. And other religions say he can't be the son of God. The Muslim faith says it, the Jewish faith says it, but they do revere him as a prophet. I'm always trying to reconcile these things in my mind, intellectually, and as opposed to just accepting it, which everyone's got a different view on things. And maybe when they say he's a son of God, I think to myself, I wonder what they mean by that. At the time, is he wasn't actually the son of God, but he represented what the son of God would be like. And those sorts of things keep going through my mind. I'm always sort of thrashing this stuff around in my brain because, by the way, as a kid, I was an altar boy.
Oh, really?
I was an altar boy, yeah. I was an altar boy with my best mate, Whitey. In fact, we were altar boys right through to about the age of 14 or 15. We used to do Mass every Tuesday and every Sunday at St. Jerome's in Punchbowl. We even were altar boys at the ordination of a couple of priests, etc. We were right into it. And my mother was Irish Catholic, and she went to church every Sunday to the day she passed away, and sometimes during the week as well. So she was very strict. My dad's Greek Orthodox, a little less so that way. So I had that around me in my life. I've never had to call on it, but interestingly enough, I've never abandoned it either. But I'm always trying to, probably more so recently too, trying to reconcile how this all works, not only in my life, but what makes sense to me. I haven't worked it out yet. And it's actually great to talk to people like you because I can see the logic in it as well after talking to you, where it becomes really important.
Absolutely. It's plays a big role in our family. And like I said, for us, our kids are no longer behind us, actually ahead of us.
That's interesting. That's another great way of putting it.
I see them, my wife and I say, you know what, I think the greatest hour of our life would be the hour we'd pass away, pass into the next life. It's going to be awesome. They're going to be preparing us a place. And like each to their own. I don't put any pressure on anyone. That's our stance on it.
That's your story too, which is great.
And that's my story. And it's not necessarily anyone else's story. But
it's fascinating.
My kids, you see them, man. They're socially healthy. They've really, because they've got that instilled in them. There's an understanding that there's another place, and that's where they're at. They're not actually at Rookwood Cemetery. They're more alive today than they ever have been, and that helps us move into the next chapter of our lives as well.
Is this a new chapter now? I mean, you've had a little girl. So is this a new chapter?
It is a new chapter. We're very happy. We've got purpose. You see the kids coming together. And, I took Liana out for dinner that about 2 nights after the baby was born, and I sat with her. She's now 12, turning 13. I said, Liana, what did you learn? It's been 2 years now. She says, Dad, I learned from you and Mum never to give up. Because you know what? We had a miscarriage. Between.
Yeah.
And we still didn't give up. We had another child. And she says, Mum, she really inspires me. I said, Liana, life is going to be tough, sweetie, but you just don't sit in the same spot. You got to learn to move forward. And, as a dad, I feel like I've done my job. She can see, she'll always be inspired by her parents, no matter what she goes through when she's an adult. And my wife and I, intentionally, we want to make sure that they see that, we've been through the worst, but we're going to come out of it.
It's about as bad as you can get.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much worse.
It's a nightmare. You can't get worse than what we've been through.
So what about the media attention? What did you think of the media attention when it first started surrounding you, which is what media does? And by the way, I'm in the media, this is media, but media tends to want to find tragedy and sensationalism, and I'm not saying it was sensationalized, but it is a grab. At any stage did you think, stuff this, I'm not going to talk to them?
Look, they've been, like, I'm probably a minority. They've been pretty good with this. They haven't really sort of thrown dirt at us or anything like that. Actually, yesterday, funny enough, someone did ring me about an incident that happened, and they put the bait in front of us, and we said no comment, and we walked
Good.
away. So, yeah, there was Le Montage, in Leichhardt.
Yeah, I know
there's
the
a
place.
skate park, and they used our story saying, we don't want the skate park. Look what happened in Oatlands. And they said, oh, what are your thoughts? They
That's
said,
community.
yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I said, look, I know the guy. He's a nice guy, and I don't want to comment on it. It's not my business. He's entitled to say whatever he wants. And I think they didn't expect me to say that. And
Good.
we closed it off.
That's quite that's good defensive position to play, because all it does is drag you into it. And then, okay, the media were fairly supportive of you. They certainly didn't say anything that I saw that was not supportive. What about the police and the ambulance? How was your relationship with those individuals?
They were very supportive. Paramedics, especially the police, they stood by us. They never left our side. They checked in on us every now and then. You know, in the midst of this tragedy, we saw the human spirit rise. People became people again. The community really, really looked after us.
Yeah, so if we could just talk about the community for a moment. How do you feel when you see where the kids passed away, where they were hit, where the accident occurred, like crazy amounts of flowers and cards and notes and just mental. How did you feel how did you feel about your community? It's probably not even your community, it's broader than your community. It's beyond that. People from everywhere were coming around showing you their sympathetic position and empathetic position too.
We had people fly from overseas to the funeral, people interstate. It was overwhelming. I didn't think it was going to have that impact that it did. But it did show a lot of the Aussie spirit. Leila and I, we didn't turn our stove on for 6 months. People would come with food out the front of our house. In our community in Oatlands, people would arrange to get the kids ready, take them to school, take them to their activities, and drop them back home within the school, because my wife and I were, as you can appreciate, we were on our backs for 6 months. We were lost. We didn't know what to do. And, it's as positive as I might sound, the grief was smashed us. So we saw this side of a community that really looked after us, dropping off. We couldn't even go to Coles. How do I get to Coles? Everything at Coles reminded me of my kids. And they really stepped up.
And how do you think, I don't mean you have to repay them, but do you feel indebted?
We can never repay the community, but what we have done, some families we have invited over and thanked them personally. We're still getting flowers from the newborn as well, and there's nothing we can do to repay them. And I think our story of forgiveness is something that's impacted their lives. I know that men have come up to me, become better dads, and have been inspired by our story. Mothers, better parents, and understood, how to fill their kids' love tanks a lot better.
Because it's not just about how do I deal with grief. That's one part of it. But it's about how you build your bank account. These sorts of things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
These are important. And, that's actually a really good message. And you've started up a charity.
My wife and I, we were at Parliament House. They implemented a new law called the Four Angels Law. If someone gets done for mid-range, before it was illegal, mid-range alcohol.
Yep.
Before it was illegal to be drug tested. Now they can drug test them. And in a nutshell, it's if they get done for drugs and mid-range alcohol, it's like a quadruple charge.
Right.
So we were there, and I remember Leila goes, can I see? The Premier at the time was Gladys. Gladys, we saw her and we asked her, can we have an I Forgive Day on the day of the tragedy in honor of the children? And, she said we'd be honored to do that. So that day was a conversation on forgiveness. because we were understanding that forgiveness is for the forgiver more than the forgiven. And I remember that 2021, 1st of February, we had the launch. Gladys came, Jihad Dib, Mark Latham, Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister and his family, and other dignitaries came as well. And we launched it. And it's actually starting to grow. It became now I Forgive Week. We've had communities come and reach out to us. We've had, with I Forgive now, we're looking at a prison program, conversation on forgiveness, people forgiving each other in prison.
Within the prison.
Yeah, within the prisons, and people forgiving their families and their loved ones for all the hurt, and forgiving themselves as well. It's important as well. A lot of people haven't forgiven themselves. We've actually got the Islamic community now. We had 200 imams on I Forgive Friday.
Wow.
Talk about forgiveness.
200.
Yeah, supporting. We had I Forgive Sabbath. We had over, a lot of rabbis, I can't give you the exact figure, spoke about forgiveness that week on I Forgive Week at the synagogues. And then we've got I Forgive Sunday. All the churches talking
Christian
about
churches.
forgiveness. All the Christian, over 1,000 churches spoke about forgiveness. Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox. And now we've been talking to the Indigenous community about forgiveness and what it looks like for them.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in the Indigenous community. Is it a concept like that similar to the way, say, Christians might do it, or Muslims or Jews, etc.?
I think I've reached out and said, how does an Aboriginal forgive, like spiritually? What does it look like, before, in their past? How does it work, and what's the structure of it, just to understand? And I've actually spoken about, some communities in the Indigenous, speaking about, what does forgiveness look like for them as well.
That's interesting, isn't it? With elders.
Yeah, I've been talking to a few key people as well. So it's in negotiations.
Yeah, good.
At the moment, I've reached out to the gay community to come in with I Forgive.
Yep.
So all it is at the moment, it's an
I Forgive movement.
It's a movement about forgiveness. And let me tell you something, Mark. For as long as forgiveness is becoming the new gratitude affirmation. Because if you have an unforgiving heart and you try and meditate and you try and be grateful, and all, it doesn't work. It's like a kink in a hose with your spirituality. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you need to have that. You need to let go, because it takes more courage to forgive.
Do you get the whole concept of forgiveness out of the last two sentences of the Lord's Prayer?
Forgive us our trespasses
as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Yes, it became part of my makeup. And then I look back and I see the story of Jesus, where he got belted, spat on. He hung up on the cross. They were all laughing at him. His last words were, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And if you had it to say it in today's terms, I heard Eckhart Tolle say it. He says, "Forgive them, Father, for they are unconscious." And a lot of people hurt people because they are unconscious. They don't realize what they're doing.
But they're not thinking about it.
No.
They're being just reactive or instinctive.
Yeah.
Instinctive where they don't have a spiritual process and belief instilled into their brain already.
Correct. If you know you're going to do something and it's going to really hurt that person, spiritually you'd know not to do it then.
Yeah.
But they don't know.
Yeah, because they haven't been exposed to it.
Exactly.
A very famous Jesuit who was a friend of mine, I once asked him, I said to him, I can say it now because he's passed away, Jesuit priest he was, and I said to him, can you tell me something, like when you pray to God, is it okay if I ask God for something? Like, or is he going to say, listen, dude, you got too much, you're not getting ahead, get any more or whatever, you know? Like, is it okay to say, listen, I really want this deal to go through. Can you help me? You know, because God's all powerful and he can do everything. So you can do that and plus everything else he's been asked. I asked him that question. This is only maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. And to my amazement, he said to me, I want you to recite the Lord's Prayer to me. I started reciting. And when I got to the part where I said, give us this day our daily bread, he said, stop. He said, what do you think that means? Give us this day our daily bread. And I said, well, I thought it was some reference to the communion or something along those lines. When you go to church on Sunday, you get Holy Communion. He said, no. As in Jesuits being very practical, but also very bright and have a deep understanding of the religion. He said, give us this day our daily bread means basically whatever it is you need. What do I need today? And if I need the deal to be done,
It'll get done.
It'll get done. He said, Mark, be practical. It's okay to say, give us this day our daily bread. In other words, give me what it is I need. And there's nothing wrong with asking for it as long as you have gratitude in relation to getting it. He said, you might not get it.
You might say no.
But you can ask for it. There's nothing wrong with asking for it. And these are all very, very well-honed, well-refined techniques that religious institutions have worked out work. Not just Catholics or Jews or Muslims or Buddhists. Going even back before that, you can go back into, Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and all those guys. And, if you want to talk about the Greek gods or they're all the same. It's the same story because it all works. It all works and it works. And it's very important. And what's interesting is we don't think enough about techniques that work for us during trauma and even less than trauma, just stress. And what can we call on? Where do we get our hope from? And, you've given us this is a great lesson for all of us. And I Forgive Day is not just about me forgiving, but it's also about us remembering, or you helping us remember, all the reasons why forgiveness actually helps us deal with trauma and stress. As you said, the forgiver gets a big advantage.
Forgiving yourself, if you can forgive yourself, if everyone could forgive themselves, man, that's the biggest suicide prevention. You think about the person that has death by suicide. What do you think is going through his head?
Guilt.
Where's
regrets.
The guilt? Regrets. Anger, upset. If he was able
Poison.
to have the tools of forgiveness and be able to say, you know what, I value myself enough and I forgive myself for everything I've done in my past, I think there'd be a lot less attempts of suicide.
Do we live in a day these days of blame and guilt? Do you think there's too much of that? Quickly got to find a reason to blame that person for something or other.
Yeah, we do. We live in a world of too much blame and guilt.
Hate, blame, guilt.
We just go straight there.
Yeah.
We don't rise above and say, okay, wait a minute, let's look at some other ways of doing things.
It's too easy to blame, isn't it?
It's just easy. Yeah.
Do you think that's all part of where we're going with, our lives, that everything's instantaneous, is not really well thought through, it's more about instinctive responses? I mean, blame is such an easy instinct to use. It's your fault. There's a problem with COVID, it's your fault.
There's no empathy.
No empathy.
Nothing at all.
So you're going to be pushing, your I Forgive movement is going to effectively, has to push against this.
Exactly. We need to look at, okay, why forgive? Why would you forgive? People look at forgiveness in a way where we say, you know what, I'm not going to forgive him. He doesn't deserve it. But you deserve peace.
Yeah.
You deserve peace.
That's really interesting. You know what I just thought of then too, when you were saying this, and 2,000 years ago, and the scribes and Pharisees in those days, in that period, were about blame and were about persecution. He caused a problem. He's a rebel. He's causing me a problem politically. I'm blaming him. Let's string him up. And then a whole movement went against that.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst we are much more advanced than we were 2,000 years ago, technologically, the same instincts are coming out of us. And in fact, the technology is actually driving these instincts to some extent.
They're
especially with
magnifying
kids.
it, actually.
Totally. And this whole movement is a good movement. It's a great movement. It's a really important movement for us to have as a society.
Let me tell you, man, people are yearning for this. People are trying to understand this whole forgiveness piece. They're hungry for it. All walks of life, everyone, we want to be a part of this. We want to understand it. Because you see families, they're just broken down where the brother, I remember I had a friend of mine, his kids don't talk to each other. They hate each other. I said to him, man, tell me about your relationship with your brother. He goes, F him, I don't want, I don't talk to him, or we didn't speak here. I go, what do you want them to do? You've taught them how to be unforgiving. Obviously they're going to turn on each other. And that's the message I want to try and teach people, mate. Listen, there's a greater good. You might not talk to your brother, but you got these kids in front of you, they're watching you. Are you going to accept them not talking to each other when they're older? So that's where the whole forgiveness piece sits for me.
It's become a mission for you to some extent. I can feel it.
Yes,
You become a missionary in this regard.
absolutely. It's a humanitarian message
Yeah,
as
you know,
well.
it's totally is. Totally is. I don't think we can not proceed into discussing the support you received from some of our leaders. What was your experience at the top level?
Gladys came to the funeral. She met up with us when I needed to see her. She's a beautiful lady. She came to the 1 year mass, to my one with our kids, to Bridget's daughter's 1 year mass, and she came to the I Forgive launch as well. Very supportive and very loving. She's very nurturing.
And she's a good woman.
She's a very nice person. And, you know, I had Minister Dib, Jihad Dib as well, member for Lakemba.
Yep.
He's been by our side for a long, long time. And we've become actually friends with him as well. And he always checks in on me and says, "G'day." Our Prime Minister, Mr. Scott Morrison, he's been outstanding. If I just shared with you the things he's done off camera, you'd think, wow, this is our Prime Minister. You know, on the day of the funeral, his wife Jennifer came down and paid her respects. Then he invited us over, myself, Leila, Bridget, Craig, to his place. And you know what? You could see he was touched by the whole story, and he was very supportive. I remember Father's Day. I was at Rookwood Cemetery. It was the first year, crying and upset and thinking about the kids. He messages me, "Danny, I'm thinking of you today on Father's Day."
That's like the middle of the pandemic too. That's September.
It was very tough. Then he's got a picture of my kids in his office
Really?
as well. He sent
Oh,
a photo.
wow.
He goes, "Danny, looks a beautiful picture." He put it in his little pocket. The day of the sentencing, they sentenced the driver. I walked out of court and he was the first person to call me. He said, "Danny, nothing will ever replace your kids." But it was the biggest manslaughter sentence, 28 years manslaughter sentence that they've ever given out. He goes, "But this sentencing was a good sentencing." Who does that? That's our Prime Minister. This is stuff he does off camera.
Yeah, he's not trying to do it because he wants
No.
to get media out of it.
A friend of mine, he was pushing his son from Sydney to Canberra to raise money. He's got that Duchenne muscular.
Yeah. Which normally most kids don't go beyond 19 years of age.
Yes, Ellie.
I know
his
Ellie.
name is.
I know. I've supported that charity in the past.
Mate, he texted me. He was getting there, and
By the way, his son is still still doing well. So it's
yes,
pretty
he's
well.
a very nice man. Actually,
It's
he
amazing.
reached out as well. He texted me, he goes, "Am I able to meet the Prime Minister?" He was going to Canberra. I messaged Scott. I said, "Scott, do you mind if a friend of mine's pushing his son? He's raising money." And you know what? He met him. Just said, "Look, no worries. If I've got time, I'll go and say g'day." And he was able to do it. And this is the stuff, like I said, that he does off camera. That's why when I see on the news of this whole shaming business on the Prime Minister, it's sad what they're doing. It's not right. It's not his character. He's not anti-Lebanese. He actually loved Lebanon.
Yeah.
He told me I had the time of my life. And
He's been in Lebanon.
yeah.
Wow.
He had a really good time. He was been to Lebanon.
Yeah.
And he would go back in a heartbeat with the family, later on in life. He didn't find it bad, and he's not anti-Lebanese. He's got a lot of people that love him in the Lebanese community as well, and he loves them as well. So I think it's just the hype of the elections. I think that's what they do.
I'm glad you put that into perspective because I wasn't aware of that.
He's like a normal person. He's one of us. We had our house broken into at the time.
You serious?
About 6-8 months after the tragedy, Leila was at home and someone had run upstairs, taken some jewelry and bolted out. It was all over the news. His wife, Jen, rings Leila and says, "Listen, I'm going to come and stay over at your place tonight. Just so you can feel safe." How humbling is that, to see the Prime Minister's wife reach out? We said, "Look, that's okay. Don't trouble yourself." But she meant it from all her heart, that she wanted to make sure that Leila was okay. They don't have to do that. They're already busy with their lifestyle and that. But this is something from the heart. They're genuine people.
Well, that's a great revelation from my point of view. I don't know Jen. I've met her, but I don't know her. I know the Prime Minister, and he comes across to me as a genuine sort of person. Like he's pretty real, but it's hard to be real in politics, especially when you're getting smashed left, right, and centre. And your whole career's on the line based on what you might have said or what someone else might have said or done. That probably had no relationship back to you whatsoever. And unfortunately, that's the way the world is at the moment. And I guess you've got to cop it sweet. If you want to play that game, you've got to cop it. But still, it's interesting to hear someone with a completely different point of view about Scott Morrison and Jenny Morrison, not the Prime Minister, the two people.
We'll take the Prime Minister hat off and I'll tell you two people that I know. And, mate, they're awesome. They've been very kind, very loving. And sometimes you just see what they're doing out there in the media. It's sad that we just spoke about blaming. We went through the worst. This is the worst time to be a Prime Minister.
Oh.
And I think compared to the rest of the world, we're probably top 5 in the world. People are blaming him for the bad stuff that's happened. But why don't we blame him for the good stuff as well?
Yeah.
Why don't we say, look, all the positive stuff that's happened coming out of COVID?
Because we don't look at positive stuff. That's the problem. The media environment likes to feed this negativity because it's not the media's fault. It's because the consumers are interested in negativity.
That sells.
That sells. They like negativity, and I actually don't understand. Mind you, if everybody's sort of talking about roses and pansies and glowing things, maybe the news doesn't become the news anymore.
Human nature, we love drama.
Yeah, we're wired for it because it gets our attention. Because it could be something that relates to us. Otherwise, good news. Oh, okay, cool. I'm happy with that. Kumbaya. Sit around. Let's have a beer or something like that. Danny, you've told me some things and you've expressed some things to me, which to be frank with you, I was completely unprepared for. I didn't realise that our conversation would go to where it went to. No, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Probably more importantly, from my point of view, I've learned something. I learned something about you, but I've learned something for me. And I'm being very selfish in that regard. But I've learned something about the logic of spirituality, and I like your term, the forgiver. There's always something in it for the forgiver. And I think that's a really important thing to be remembered. But that's something I've learned today. Dan Abdallah.
Thanks, mate.